Well, good morning. Thank you very much. Good morning. It's great to be here in Manchester. I want to thank Jim Brett for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for making sure that everybody knew I was the second most popular. But I want to thank you, Jim, and everyone at the New England Council, along with Neil Levesque and the New Hampshire Institute of Politics, President DeSalvo here at St. Anselm's. It truly is an honor to be here with all of you this morning to speak before this very distinguished group, and I want to thank all of you so much for being here this morning, especially those of you who were up late last night, and the students particularly. It's great after being up well after midnight last night. You're here at 8 o'clock in the morning. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Let me just start by saying for my friends in the media that are here this morning that I'm not here to make any official announcements today. I just thought that April would be a beautiful time to visit New Hampshire. And I know that you had those 5 Democratic candidates here doing the CNN town hall last night. I guess there are 19 Democratic candidates in the race for president already, with Joe Biden jumping in the race tomorrow or maybe the next day, and even more that are still considering throwing their hats into the ring. So at least 20 Democratic candidates are going to be descending on the state of New Hampshire, and I felt it was important to do my part to bring a little bit of political diversity to politics and eggs. Besides, I've been asked to sign just about everything, bobbleheads, T-shirts, baseballs, crab mallets, but I was really excited to finally get the chance to sign those famous wooden eggs. So thank you very much for the invitation. Governor Chris Sununu had also invited me up here for a visit. He said that he could really use some advice about how to deal with the Democratic legislature. It's a new phenomenon for him. I had lunch yesterday with the most popular governor in America, your famous governor in Massachusetts, Charlie Baker, and I told him I'm coming for him, by the way. I'm gunning. These polls come out every quarter, and I'm always like 1 point or 2 points behind him. He texts me and says, "You're nipping at my heels," and I was like, darn, you're a tough guy to catch up with. But I told him the next one that comes out, I'm going to be #1, and he said, bring it on. But Charlie and I talked, and we are both certainly willing to come back up here and share our experiences with Governor Sununu about dealing with Democratic legislatures. It's great to be back here in the beautiful Granite State. I spent a little bit of time here during the 2016 presidential election. Chris Christie had been wearing a lime green Hogan Strong wrist brace. There's one right here this morning. I can't believe those are still in circulation, but thank you for wearing that this morning. But throughout my battle with cancer that Jim mentioned, Chris Christie had that wristband all throughout the presidential campaign, and he pledged that he wasn't going to take it off until I was cancer-free. And I called him with the good news, and I said, Chris, you can finally take that wristband off. And he said, I'm not going to take it off. You have to come to New Hampshire and cut it off my wrist, which I did at a very emotional town hall in Peterborough. And I really appreciated the kind gesture by Governor Christie. But I think it really was just a ploy to get me up here to campaign for him in New Hampshire. So I traveled around on his campaign bus, and I did a bunch of events. I was here for the Republican debate. I was here for election night, where I introduced him. But Chris had helped me 2 years earlier, in 2014, when he was chairman of the Republican Governors Association, and when absolutely no one gave us any chance whatsoever to win the state of Maryland. Maryland is arguably, and I had this argument with the governor of Massachusetts yesterday, but Maryland is the bluest and most liberal state in America. Voter registration more than 2-to-1, Democrat to Republican. We were outspent by more than 5-to-1. And just before the election, famed political prognosticator Nate Silver, who in the previous presidential election had accurately predicted every single electoral vote in the country, a couple of weeks before the election, he said I had a 94% chance of losing by between 12 and 16 points. And instead, we pulled off the greatest surprise upset in America. New York Times led a story with Larry Who. They started calling me the Seabiscuit and the Rudy of politics. Charles Krauthammer called it a nuclear explosion in Maryland. But I became the second Republican elected in 50 years because our state was way off track and heading in the wrong direction. Our economy was floundering, and too many people were struggling just to get by. 43 consecutive tax hikes had taken an additional $10 billion out of the pockets of struggling families and small businesses. And our unemployment rate had nearly doubled. Our overall economic performance was 49th out of 50 states. And a Gallup poll showed that nearly half of all Marylanders wanted to leave the state. And as a lifelong Marylander, that just broke my heart. And it made me angry enough to want to try to do something about it. And step up and run for governor is what I decided I had to do. As first elective office I've ever held. But I said we were going to try to get the government off our backs and out of our pockets so that we could grow the private sector, put people back to work, and turn our economy around. Our common sense bipartisan effort united Republicans, Democrats, and independents with a unifying message that resonated with people all across our state. And I committed to usher in a new era of bipartisan cooperation, one filled with hope and optimism, where the best ideas rise to the top based on merit, regardless of which side of the aisle they come from. I pledged to govern with civility and moderation and to avoid the attempts to drive us to the extremes of either political party. We pledged to put Maryland on a new path to clean up the mess in our state and to bring fiscal responsibility and common sense to our state capital. And I know this doesn't usually happen in politics, but for a little more than 4 years, we've been doing exactly what we said we were going to do. We faced our fiscal challenges with steady resolve and eased the tax burden on hard-pressed Marylanders. The very first budget that I submitted eliminated a $5.1 billion structural deficit, which I inherited. Both houses of our legislature are more than two-thirds Democratic majority, and we have worked together to pass balanced budgets every single year without raising taxes. In fact, we've cut taxes, tolls, and fees 4 years in a row by $1.2 billion. And we put all that money back into the pockets of hardworking families, retirees, and small businesses, and back into our growing economy. We cleared away the tangle of regulatory undergrowth and paved the way for historic economic growth and record job creation. More businesses are now open and more people are working than ever before in the history of our state. And we've had one of the best economic turnarounds in America. And we've made record and historic investments in education every single year to give our schools the resources needed to prepare our children for the opportunities of the future. We protected the health care coverage of hundreds of thousands of Marylanders and achieved lower insurance rates for the first time in a decade. We met our transportation challenges head-on by rebuilding our infrastructure, and we have practiced skilled stewardship of the environment, which has resulted in clean air standards that are stronger than 48 other states, and a Chesapeake Bay, which is cleaner than it has been in recorded history. Our state is only 26% Republican, but after 4 years of bipartisan success and economic progress, last November in our deep blue state in a big blue year with a huge blue wave, we rode a purple surfboard to an overwhelming double-digit victory. And while my party was racking up losses all across the country. In our state, where Hillary Clinton won in 2016 by 26 points. As Jim mentioned, I got more votes than any previous gubernatorial candidate ever, and I became the second Republican governor reelected in the entire 243-year history of our state. The voters of our state rejected divisive politics and voted instead for civility, bipartisanship, and common sense. And they sent a loud and clear message to Washington that they heard across the country. As a young man, I worked for Ronald Reagan, who once said that there is no limit to the amount of good that you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. It's that kind of common sense pragmatism that has guided our path. We found a way to disagree without being disagreeable. We stood side by side with our Democratic legislature, our different views clearly acknowledged, but not obstructing our path forward. We spent 4 years working together to unshackle the unlimited promise and potential of our state. We debated, discussed, and reasoned together, honestly and productively, with integrity and sincere purpose. We argued without acrimony, negotiated without hidden agendas, and compromised without political posturing. We didn't demand Republican solutions or Democratic solutions. We sought out bipartisan, common sense solutions that worked for the people of our state. We didn't surrender our principles. We simply practiced the art of the possible, and we trusted the voters to appreciate the distinction. Rather than engaging in mere rhetoric, we delivered real results for the people who elected us. We have put people's priorities before partisan interests and tackled our common problems by accepting our shared responsibility to solve them. We have repudiated the debilitating politics practiced elsewhere, including just 30 miles down the road from our State House in Washington, where insults substitute for debate, recrimination for negotiation, and gridlock for compromise, and where the only result is divisiveness and dysfunction. Where getting something done for the people no longer seems to be a priority. Look, there's plenty of blame to go around. People on both sides of the aisle refuse to give up even a little to get a lot done. Neither side really wants to make progress. They just want to make demands and win arguments. That's not governing. That's just political theater. And most Americans are sick and tired of all that drama. Look, I'm willing to stand up and fight for the things that really matter, but not for status quo politics, and not to perpetuate polarization and paralysis. I come from the get to work and get things done school of politics, and I'll work with anyone who wants to do the people's business. We have enough worries, stress, and drama in our private lives, don't we? We might have a sick child or an elderly parent to care for, problems at work or in school, a spouse who's lost a job, or a close friend who's hurting. Maybe we recently received a tough diagnosis or lost someone we love. We all suffer enough challenges that give us plenty to worry about. But you shouldn't have to worry about or constantly obsess over or argue constantly about angry and divisive politics. You should be able to have confidence in the character and the competence of the people you elect to office, regardless of their party affiliation, and trust that they'll do their best to achieve real solutions. To those of us who are blessed by your trust, we should give you a government that doesn't act as if it's something apart from you, but one that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. A government that appreciates that no one of us has all the answers or all the power. A government that tolerates contrary views among a diverse citizenry without making them into enemies or doubting their patriotism. A government that can discuss and debate with as much civility as passion, and with a view to persuade, not intimidate, to encourage, not demonize or defeat. That is exactly what we have succeeded in providing to the people of our state over the past 4 years. A humble, tolerant, respectful, and effective government that has worked together and found bipartisan common sense solutions. A government that took on big problems and actually made things better for the people we serve. A government that we could all be proud of. 4 years ago, more than 2/3 of all Marylanders thought our state was way off track and heading in the wrong direction. But after all the progress that we've made together, now more than 2/3 of all Marylanders think we're heading in the right direction. And while partisanship and dysfunction have literally consumed Washington, just right down the road, right next door, in Maryland, we have chosen a completely different path. We have been standing up for that exhausted majority who are completely fed up with all the angry and divisive politics. I believe that what people really want is for their elected officials in both parties to stop all the fighting and just get to work and get things done. Despite all the wedge politics and petty rhetoric which is used so often today to cause division and to incite anger on both the right and the left, I still believe that what unites us is greater than that which divides us. The problems we face are not easily remedied, but we have faced and overcome more daunting challenges before, as individuals and as a nation. My experiences over the past 4 years have blessed me with optimism, not burdened me with dread. And I know from personal experience that hope, not fear, is the most powerful emotion and the author of humanity's greatest achievements. To those who say that our political system is too broken and that it can't be fixed, I would argue that we have already shown a better path forward. And if we can accomplish it in our state, then there is no place in America where these very same principles cannot succeed. Thank you. God bless you, and may God continue to bless the United States of America.
We have a few minutes for questions. We have some students who have the microphone, so if you could just wait until the mics come and maybe identify yourself. So our good friends from AARP always ask a question on daycare, I think.
Daycare? Okay. Well, some, grandparents are concerned about daycare.
Good morning, Governor Hogan. I'm Evelyn Barkham from the Executive Council of AARP, and our question has to do with prescription drugs. Americans today continue to pay the highest drug prices of anyone in the world, and no one should have to choose between feeding their families and taking the drugs that are necessary. Do you agree the drug prices are too high? And if so, specifically, how would you work to lower those prescription drug costs, and how would you make them affordable for all Americans?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, thank you for I appreciate the whole table of AARP members being here this morning, and thank you for your work on behalf of retired people and your passion on these issues. Yes, I agree, prescription drugs pricing are definitely too high. It's a major issue in the country, and one that we have to find, as I was talking in my remarks, bipartisan consensus on, because there seem to be people talking at each other and not with each other, and we've got to find real solutions, as we have done in Maryland. We're still working on trying to solve the prescription drug pricing problem, but we recently came together, we just passed a bill in our legislature to try to address this issue, and we appointed a commission to try to study how we're going to solve it. We don't have all of the answers yet. But there's a lot that goes into this. It's not just the pharmaceutical companies that are gouging, people. They're middlemen. It's the pharmacies. It's the insurance companies. Everybody has a part of this problem, and we've got to look at it holistically. But there's no question it has to be addressed. We came together on healthcare in our state, where the Washington Post said we had the most innovative solutions of any state in the country. We actually, with Washington failing on these issues, really should be addressed in Washington, I think, rather than in all the states. Again, they haven't been able to get almost anything done on health care or on prescription drugs. In our state, on insurance rates, which is another big issue that was people are making decisions about, could we pay our insurance, our monthly insurance, or put food on the table, or pay our other bills. We came together and actually protected coverage and lowered rates for the first time in a decade since the Affordable Care Act. We have to come up with a similar kind of solution where we get Democrats and Republicans together on pharmaceutical prices. It's a huge, huge issue that's affecting not just people, elderly and retired folks, but people all across the board. It has to be addressed, but thank you.
Other questions for the Governor?
Thank you. Governor Hogan, in 2014, the year you were first elected, the Freddie Gray protests really put Baltimore on a national stage and brought about a larger discussion about policing, especially in cities like Baltimore. What have you done in your tenure to address some of the concerns that were raised during these protests, and also what would be your plan for on a national stage to try to heal the divides in our criminal justice system?
It's great. Well, thank you. First of all, with the riots that broke out in Baltimore, I had been governor for 89 days, and the death of Freddie Gray sparked unrest in Baltimore City. We had, within the first few hours, 400 and some businesses and homes were destroyed. 147 police and firefighters were injured and hospitalized. The city was out of control. We had just gotten our whole team together. We had a plan in place. I declared a state of emergency. We sent in 4,000 members of the National Guard, 1,000 police officers, and I immediately moved my entire operation to the city of Baltimore. I walked the streets for a solid week and talked with people, community leaders, faith-based leaders, and folks that were very upset and concerned and had issues, and I walked the streets of every corner of Baltimore and talked with them. We restored peace and calm to the city of Baltimore. And then we started, which we were universally praised for. You know, I now teach a course at the National Governors Association, which I'm about to chair in July, that group, National Governors. But I now talk to other governors about how to deal with a crisis like that, especially when you're a brand new governor. But that was just the immediate crisis to bring law and order back to the city. And then we have to begin trying to address many of the issues. We passed criminal justice reform in our state, again, working with Democrats, one of the most innovative in America. And it was a real bipartisan effort that we got things done. And we're trying to address it from a criminal justice standpoint, but there are other issues. You know, we're trying to address poverty. We're trying to bring in job training. We're trying to put more money in education. We have a blight removal program where many people were saying, look at all these boarded up buildings where they're dealing drugs. We've removed 3,000 boarded up buildings. It's a holistic, we have to work on the 50 years of things that have caused all the issues long term, but we had to fix the immediate crisis, and then what are we going to do long term to solve these problems? But urban, cities all across America have similar kinds of issues that have to be addressed. It's not just a policing issue. It's not just an urban unrest issue. You have to look at every aspect of it.
Other questions for the governor?
Sure.
John.
Sorry. I appreciate you being here today. I had a
Thank
question about Alzheimer's for you. So, Alzheimer's is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States and affects almost 5 million people in the United States, plus about 16 million caregivers for those individuals. What would you suggest we do to fight that crisis?
Well, it's a terrible crisis, and probably one of the most. I went through cancer. You know, there's a lot of things out there that are terrible diseases, but this is one that's just one of the most tragic, Alzheimer's. I lost a first cousin to early onset Alzheimer's, who died at age 60 from this, younger than I am, and it was just tragic. I don't know the exact numbers in Maryland, but we're as affected as any other state in the country. Thank you for being involved in trying to raise awareness of this issue. We have a commission in Maryland that is helping to do the same thing, raise awareness and get more people involved. But I'd love to hear from you about the kinds of things that you think can be addressed. Obviously, more raising awareness, putting more money towards finding solutions. You know, in Maryland, we are the headquarters for NIH and Johns Hopkins and University of Maryland Medical and FDA. So new potential drugs and discoveries, I think, may be part of the answer. But getting more investment and getting people focused on the problem is part of it. It's a tragic, terrible disease. Thank you for your involvement.
Gentleman in the back. And then Brad.
Thank you, Larry Hogan, for coming. I have a question. So you talked about Washington not getting anything done, and you've seemed to get a lot done in Maryland. So when do you think they'll decide to run, or if you're going to run or not run? You talked about a lot of Democrats jumping in the race. Bill Weld jumped in the race. So when are you going to make your decision on that?
Well, so this was not something that I was really focused on. A lot of people have been approaching me probably since around the time of my inauguration in late January. People have asked me to give this serious consideration, and I think I owe it to those people to do just that. And that's what I'm doing. I'm listening. Coming to New Hampshire and listening to people is a part of that process. I've been to 10 states in the past few months. I have 16 more on my schedule. But I'm not at the point where we're ready. I've said before, I'm not going to launch some kind of a suicide mission. I have a real day job that's important to me for the people of Maryland. Unless I thought there was a path to victory. Bill Weld, I think, is a wonderful guy, and I talked to him just before he launched, but he's not a sitting governor. It's a different calculus for me. But I obviously have very, very strong concerns about the future of my party and the future of the country. And so I'm going to take as much time as it takes to make that decision. I think you know better than most the filing deadline. So I think for New Hampshire is November. So there's more time than most people think. We have Democratic candidates that announce almost every week. And people think that that you have to make those decisions early now, and I don't think that's true. I think if you look back, yeah, you can do them later in the fall, but there's no real timeline.
Governor, what did you think of the Republican National Committee passing a resolution earlier this year giving the president undivided support
I was
2020?
I was pretty critical of that. You know, not that the Republican National Committee doesn't have the right to support the sitting president, but to change the rules and to insist 100% loyalty to the dear leader, it just didn't sound. It didn't sound very much like the Republican Party that I grew up in, working for Ronald Reagan and supporting, you know, George Bush. And, you know, I'm for a return to a more traditional Republican Party. But changing the rules and stifling debate and demanding, you know, that we can't even have an open discussion about the future of the party in the country is, to me, a very short-sighted and wrong move for the Republican National Committee. It does not represent the average voter, however. It's a small group of people in Washington that make these decisions, and they're not really representative of the average person.
Brad, did you have a question? Huh? Yeah. He asked you a question. The gentleman behind Brad.
Thank you, Governor. I wanted to ask if you decided to run for president, and if you were elected, how would you balance the federal budget?
I would just have a magic wand. You know, I think in much the same way as we've got, it's not easy. I'm not here to say I have a magic solution to it, but we have to start working across party lines. Look, we've balanced the budget every single year for 4 years with a state where 2/3 of both the House and the Senate are Democrats. In fact, very liberal Democrats, many of whom want to spend more than we can afford to spend, and many of whom want to raise taxes when I want to not raise taxes. But we found a way to reach agreement. In Washington, I don't think they've really balanced a budget or passed a full budget. We have continuing resolutions. They haven't passed a budget since 1996. You know, and a balanced budget, I can't imagine when the last time it was. I don't even remember. But it's, you know, we've got to work to rein in spending, and we can't spend beyond our means, and we've got to figure out the best way to do that, and we've got to work with Democrats and Republicans together. States do it all the time. You know, governors are governing, Republicans and Democrats, but Washington is not. Washington is broken and dysfunctional, and well, one person can't fix it by themselves. But you know, I've stood up to the president when I disagree with him on particular issues, and I've said certain things about I didn't like the tone or the way he was conducting himself. But my real issue is we're not getting anything done. You know, we're not getting Congress to do anything. You know, there's no real leadership. We're not bringing people together. It's just constant, you know, finger pointing, name calling, and you know, gridlock. We've got to fix that.
Gentleman behind Brad.
Good morning, Governor Hogan. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Northern New England, like many other parts of the United States, is currently suffering from an issue involving infrastructure. And I was just wondering what you've done as governor to fix infrastructure in your own state, and what you would possibly do potentially if you did run for president in the U.S. to solve the issue.
Well, thank you. That's an excellent question. So in Maryland, we had crumbling roads and bridges and the worst traffic in America when I got elected governor. We have focused on it like a laser beam. We have now moved forward on the top priority road projects in every single one of our counties, every single jurisdiction. We have now moved forward on a new transit system in Baltimore in Washington area called the Purple Line, which is 26 stops. It ties in with the Washington Metro system and Amtrak and the MARC train. So I've now invested more in transit than any previous governor, and more on roads than any previous governor. I have that's the largest P3 public-private transit project in America. On roads, we proposed the largest new highway project in the world, $11 billion total dollars of building new roads to fix the broken, you know, the traffic situation, mostly in the Washington area, but connecting Washington and Baltimore. As the incoming chair of the National Governors Association, I can tell you that every governor, it's not just New England, it's not just Maryland, every state is dealing with this. It's another example of Washington failing to lead. when not doing anything on infrastructure. And so we're going to bring all of the governors together with all the counties and all the mayors and Congress and the White House and try to, there's disagreement about how to solve these problems, and there's lots of different potential solutions. But first is just bringing the stakeholders to the table. And nobody's even focused on it. We aren't even having the discussions. So I'm going to try to lead those discussions and see if we can't, whether I'm running for president or not, I'm going to try to do something about infrastructure here in New England and across the country, just like we have done in Maryland.
Gentleman here to the right.
Well, this is awfully convenient. I have the mic in my hands. But my name is Brendan. I'm a student here at St. Anselm. I had the opportunity over winter break to go on we call it service and solidarity trips. So I spent the week in Baltimore City working with the homeless population. Is there anything you've done as governor to kind of help alleviate that huge problem in more urban areas in Maryland?
Sure. Well, we've put more money into assisting charitable organizations that are providing help for the homeless, but we've also tried to make less homeless people by investing in drug treatment programs. We've put $640 million into addiction programs, and we focus on that. They often go hand in hand. And we're working on trying to focus on poverty by providing job training opportunities to help people get into an opportunity where they can get out of homelessness and get out of poverty and earn their first job and find a place to live. So we've been working at it from all directions, and I think we're making some real progress.
If I could just ask you a question on the politics again. Bill Weld is the only candidate right now in the Republican primary. Are you encouraging other candidates who think along your line of thinking to get into the primary, or are you just happy to be where you are and being a person of counsel?
No, Bill Weld called me just before he announced, and I had a great conversation with him. I wished him well, and I encouraged him and thanked him for being willing to step up and run. He was a wonderful governor of Massachusetts. Look, I happen to believe, if you're supportive of the president or not supportive of the president, I happen to believe that debate and discussion and talking about the issues is good. I think having the ability to have different viewpoints is good. That's why the stifling of debate and the RNC cutting off any discussion is bad. It could make him a stronger candidate, and maybe if other people were, instead of waiting till the fall to see who he's going to run against. But I think that the more the merrier. We have 20 people on the Democratic side, and we're going to be hearing about that for the next year and a half, or at least until they select somebody in August of next year. But we have nobody on the other side. And so I want to thank Bill Weld for stepping up, and I think others ought to consider it as well. I'm really concerned. In Maryland, we won in this very blue state. And we won because I won suburban women overwhelmingly. I won nearly a third of the African-American vote in a state that has a very high minority population. No other Republicans in America are doing that. I'm for building the Republican Party into a bigger tent that can appeal to more people. And I think we're doing the opposite right now. I think the Republican Party is shrinking the base down to only a certain percentage of white males. And you're not going to win national elections or most state elections. And so having more voices that are saying more things and showing that the Republican Party does have diverse thought and we're not monolithic, I think is very healthy for the party and for the country. So I'm hoping that others will consider it as well.
Maybe one final question, because I know the governor has a schedule pretty busy today. Yes, sir? You want to wait for the mic?
Governor, as a former Bladensburger,
Yeah.
The Peace Cross was important to me growing up in high school. And I was wondering if you can give any insight into your thinking, depending on which way the Supreme Court decides, if there's a way to preserve Peace Cross. Yes,
well, thank you. So for those of you who are not Marylanders and not from Bladensburg, thank you for, we're sorry we lost you to New Hampshire, or you were former Marylander. I grew up not too far from there as well, and I went to DeMatha High School, so I went around the Peace Cross nearly every day going to school, to Hyattsville, close to Bladensburg. The Peace Cross was a memorial that was put up by the American Legion by the families, the widows and children of heroes in World War I. And it was erected in I don't know exactly when the year was, but it's this cross to courage and valor and honor for heroes in World War I, paid for by the families and the American Legion. And they put it at this location. Over the years, roads came in. There's a circle now around it, and roads go around it. Somebody filed suit saying, because it was a cross, they want to take it down after all these years. And we stood up and fought for it. And it's now in federal court, and we're not going to let them take down the Peace Cross that's been there for all these decades honoring the World War I veterans. I understand people are different religions, and it's a religious symbol, but it really is just to honor those men. It's the same thing as having, you know, a Star of David or a cross at a cemetery someplace. So we've been leading the fight, and we're going to win the fight. And even if they were to somehow win that court case, we're still not going to take it down. We're going to find a way to set up a group that, a private group that we can transfer the property to, and we're going to keep that in perpetuity.
Well, we want to thank the governor of again, the second most popular governor to come by.
Soon to be #1 after today.
Well done. Well done. Excellent. Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
I gotta let you off, and then I got a little tote bag for you.
Yeah. Hold the swag. So, let Charlie know. We mentioned at least 10 times on the second leg. I even said it like 4 times. Cool. I need my Sharpie. Thank you. Oh, you got a blue one. That's going to be fancy. All the rest of them were black. So you get the bonus here. That's probably going to be worth $1 million. Huh? Oh yeah. He's going to have the only one. I don't know if you've ever tried this, but my handwriting is already bad, but it's really very. It's all right. It's very terrible to sign an egg. It's like.
Thank you for your message. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
It was a great message.
It's so important. I really believe
It really
it strongly.
is, definitely. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much for being here and for focusing on these issues. It's we really have to address these drug crisis. It's great. And as a cancer patient, I went through so much medication. For 18 months, I was doing chemotherapy, but I had like 30 different things, and thank God I had good insurance. But
we're in a good location.
Yeah, I was in a great place to be treated, and I had great insurance, but I can imagine it would have been devastating.
Someone who doesn't, I know. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Cool. Yeah.
Forgot to get the
I had to grab two. I have a good friend from Maryland. I'm going to give him one. He's over in Silver Springs, I believe.
Silver Springs.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Now, where are you from?
North Carolina, Charlotte.
Yeah, I have family in Charlotte.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, well, from Concord.
That's where I live, actually.
Is that right?
I just have to say Charlotte, yeah.
Oh, wow. So I have my nieces and nephews are down there. My sister moved down there a while ago. So I love that area.
I'm part of the Earnhardt family, so we're all big racers.
Oh, they're huge. I mean, they're huge fans.
Yeah,
so
sadly.
I was the Grand Marshal or the official starter at the Coca-Cola 600.
Oh, yeah, I go to it every year. So.
Which was very cool, waving that flag.
Junior's mom actually just passed away yesterday, so we're sad. Cancer.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.